By 1965, the Beatles were the most famous band in the entire world. No argument.
And loved here in America, here are the Beatles!
They'd broken record after record, blown right through every expectation, and played Shea Stadium in front of 55,000 screaming fans who couldn't even hear their music. But behind the scenes, something had shifted. To say the boys were tired doesn't even cover it. They were restless. Because once you've conquered the world, where do you even go from there? How do you move? After the dizzying and disorienting chaos of Beatlemania, the whirlwind tours, the film releases, the Beatles found themselves at a crossroads. They'd wake up, do an interview, play a show, record, repeat. Paul was spot on when he referred to this period of time as this conveyor belt, like this endless cycle. Their fame was still skyrocketing, but now it lacked that initial spark, that thrill and excitement. Now it just felt mechanical, like they were just pieces in this soulless operation. They were beginning to crave more. They wanted meaning and depth, answers, evolution. The cracks had started to reveal themselves in 1965. During the filming of their second movie, Help, the band began experimenting not just with new music, but by venturing out to new experiences. The biggest shift? 2 words: Bob Dylan. Back in 1964, he introduced them to his smoke show of a girlfriend, Mary Jane. And with it, he introduced a whole new way of seeing the world. John later said that they were just beginning to see. Dylan's lyrical style, poetic, raw, introspective, the kind to leave his typewriter at your apartment straight out of the tortured poets department, was a direct challenge to the Beatles' earlier, "She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah," simplicity. And it hit John like 1,000 bricks. He started to think, why can't we write like that? Why not? Meanwhile, and this is at the same time, if you look over there, you can actually see Paul falling in love with art, literally. He started dating actress Jane Asher, whose highly sophisticated, cultured family introduced him to the rich world of classical music and theater and fine art, a lifestyle that he has admitted made him feel a bit posh. He began experimenting with and getting hooked on Baroque chords, acoustic textures, and lyrics that veered more on the side of reflective than romantic. Songs like Yesterday, which had recently exploded, were showing the world a different side of the Beatles, one with soul. George was evolving too, quietly but profoundly. He had discovered Indian classical music and was enchanted. In 1965, on the set of Help, he encountered the sitar for the very first time, and he was in awe. And it wasn't just a passing curiosity either. It was a portal. Later that year, he bought himself his own sitar and taught himself to play. He also started reading up on Eastern philosophy. This would start this journey that would change the rest of his life and deeply influence the direction of the band. The Beatles were no longer those 4 cheeky lads from Liverpool. They were transcending. At the same time, they were still also the Beatles. You know what I'm saying? They still worked at Abbey Road, still with George Martin guiding their sessions, still with Brian Epstein managing their careers. But the tension between the old and the new was becoming palpable. Let's take a look at Day Tripper and We Can Work It Out, for example, their double A-side single from late 1965. Paul's We Can Work It Out was full of heart. It was thoughtful, empathetic, steady. John's Day Tripper was cynical, snarky, full of subtext, read between the lines kind of vibes. Same band, 2 clashing perspectives. And that's when they decided to stop touring. The screams had finally gotten to them. It was so loud and unbearable. The audiences had become louder than their amps. So what were they going to do? The music was just getting lost. And if we're being honest, so were they. George later said, "We got tired of not being able to hear ourselves," which, I mean, fair. So they pulled a radical move. They let the music speak. No distractions, no movie tie-ins, no tour, just a record. That record was Rubber Soul, released in December of 1965, and the Beatles were discovering themselves and their voices and their new sound and this evolution they were going on, this roller coaster, and this album proved it. I mean, lyrically, if you look at the songwriting alone, it had matured leaps and bounds. Norwegian Wood. It was haunting, but beautiful, mystical, mysterious, and, well, let's be honest, a bit scandalous. She asked me to stay and she told me to sit anywhere. It's a cryptic love affair told through the lens of a sitar, a fireplace, and some suspiciously burnt wood. It wasn't a love song. It was about regret and ambiguity, real life. Meanwhile, Paul was over here writing songs like Michelle and You Won't See Me. Delicate, gentle, somber, melancholy, sophisticated. I love this. He actually started taking French classes just to add that flair to Michelle. I mean, if that isn't devotion. And it truly worked, though. It gave it this romantic ambiance. It was almost cinematic. I love you. But behind the facade of sweetness, there was this overarching sadness. There was complexity there, duality. Their lyrics were growing up, and so were they. George stepped up to the plate and the changing of the tides, too. He contributed to two sensational masterpieces, Think for Yourself and If I Needed Someone, which are some of my personal favorites. I guess I'd be with you now. I'm too much in love. This go round, he was actually able to feature and put on display his signature 12-string Rickenbacker, and he showcased that he had some lyrics up his sleeve that had some bite. He was no longer content dancing in the background. He was merging out of those shadows. Even Ringo was out there exploring new territory. Wait featured some of his most emotional drumming to date. It was really tight and clean and restrained, yet still really deeply expressive, which is insanely difficult to navigate. Wait till I come back to your... He wasn't just keeping the time anymore. He was shaping the mood. He was curating an atmosphere. The band was changing, and so was their process. They were spending way more time in the studio. They were playing with tape loops and Verispeed and overdubs. They were no longer just recording music. They were getting their hands dirty and creating art. The result? Well, let's just go down that list really quick. Critics floored. Fans shocked. Oh boy. And the Beatles, well, they'd outgrown pop. Didn't fit anymore. The old model just didn't fit. Rubber Soul debuted at #1 and stayed there for 42 weeks. That just deserves a little moment. It marked a true turning point, not just in their sound, but of the entire landscape of modern music, the music we listen to today. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys later said that it was Rubber Soul that inspired him to create Pet Sounds. That's the level we're talking about here. And I simply can't go forward without saying this, but he actually tragically passed away today, June 11th, 2025. So my entire heart and my prayers go out to Brian Wilson and his loved ones, his family, his fans, everyone who adored him. I'm so deeply sorry. His music and legacy will live on forever. Back over to Rubber Soul. This album wasn't just influential, it was intimate. These weren't love songs, they were confessions. private moments, quiet realization. For the first time ever, the Beatles were turning their gaze inward and letting the world listen. They had nothing left to prove and everything left to gain. The mop tops were officially a thing of the past, and the boy band image was nothing but a memory. What remained was something deeper, something more poetic, more real. Rubber Soul wasn't just their next album, it was the line in the sand. From this point forward, the Beatles weren't just about to change, they were about to reinvent everything. I would like to deeply thank and give all my love to our sensational donation heroes. Thank you guys so very much. You keep these videos going. You're the reason that they get brought to life. So if you'd also like to help contribute, the links will be in the description below. Take care.